I've got my hands on early access to War Sales. There's a ton of information I want to share with you. For now, all I can really tell you is when the embargo will be, both the gameplay embargo and the review embargo, which I will do in just a second. And then, to get you really hyped for the release, I've also scoured the internet for everything that we do already know, and I'm going to wrap up the video with many things that you might have missed that you should be very excited for coming to War Sales. And I've broken it down into 4 categories for you: Naval Combat, Naval Navigation, Ships, and General. So now let's talk about the embargoes first, when you're allowed to know some new stuff. Then stick around and we'll jump into all of the awesome information you might have missed that's been revealed so far for Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord War Sales. So the first embargo is the 21st of November at 7 PM CET or 10 AM PST or your local time zone. And that is when the embargo lifts for gameplay footage, streams, and non-review based coverage. All of this footage will be spoiler free and will not show any new storyline quests. Then, on the 26th of November, at the same time that War Sales goes live globally, is when the embargo lifts for reviews, scored footage, and storyline content. So I will be doing a few videos in the interim, but obviously I love to keep my stuff spoiler free anyway, so it's perfect for me that that's what they want from us. So I will just be doing a few gameplay videos, maybe like a let's play walkthrough style, just to whet your appetite and show you what's to come. So make sure you stay tuned. 2 days, then I will be releasing lots and lots of juicy information and footage for you about War Sales. In the meantime, let's have a look at all of the stuff that has been announced so far that you might have missed, and get you even more excited about this incredibly awesome upcoming DLC. So we'll start off with Naval Combat, and in no particular order, I'm just going to leave the naval footage that we have already seen running in the background whilst I talk you through some of the important points. So, fighting in rivers and fighting out in the ocean are two very different things. The terrain is reflected in combat, with river battles being much narrower, reflecting the terrain-restricted nature of river warfare. Also, characters can swim, dive, and climb back on board, and even drown under certain circumstances. So the player character can swim without limit, but other troops, however, have limited endurance in the water based on their tier, along with other factors like if they have the mariner background and how heavily armoured they are. If their ship sinks in combat, or if they end up overboard, they will try to reach the nearest friendly vessel before they drown. Also, your army composition is now even more important than ever, as a strong naval army will likely look extremely different to a land army. One great example of this is the horses of your mounted troops, as they will take up additional inventory capacity on your ship, just as your riderless horses would. This system will massively benefit the Nords, who are very adept at fighting in the sea, and most of them have the mariner background, so most of their troops synergize very well with this mechanic. Whereas a cavalry heavy faction like the Khraze will need to be very careful about which troops they bring on board their ships. And yes, this restriction applies to the AI as well, not just the player. Also, just as nighttime can have huge impacts on battles on dry land, especially if you're fighting in dense forests, weather effects also apply out at sea, and you now have to contend with storms. Your ships can be heavily damaged if you are caught in a storm. However, you can see and hear them forming thanks to visual cues like dark clouds and thunder, and with careful navigation and good ship stats, you should eventually become adept at passing through them safely or avoiding them entirely. Also, if a port is captured where you have one or more of your ships docked, you won't lose your fleet. Your ships will automatically leave port if the town changes hands, and you will then need to go to another port town to re-summon them there. Also, AI nobles use their brain really well when weighing up sea versus land, so they should always pose a fair challenge to you regardless of where you encounter them. They will calculate so many different factors before deciding when to take to the sea or to stay on the land, and especially when engaging in combat. So just as they do on dry land, they will think about all factors, including but not limited to their ship army composition, weather conditions, the strength of their ship's hull, the travel time to their destination, their maximum troop size, and their current inventory capacity. All of this, along with so many more things, are calculated for every decision the AI makes. Also, if you are trapped out at sea with no food or with low morale, your troops will not desert at sea. They're not just going to jump overboard and drown themselves. However, they will start to desert when you reach dry land, and they will start becoming wounded if you are starving them. And when you get later on in the game and your fleet consists of more than 8 ships, only a maximum of 8 can be deployed per battle. More will not arrive halfway through in the form of reinforcements. However, if your maximum crew size exceeds your deck capacity for any of your ships, more troops can reinforce your existing vessels mid-fight. And also, a bit of a unique situation, but I absolutely love this. If you win a battle aboard an enemy ship that you have taken over, but your original and only ship has been sunk, you will still win the battle. However, when the fight ends, you will find yourself without a boat and have to raft back towards the nearest shore, unless you're lucky enough to have captured an enemy boat in the post-battle loot screen. And finally, for naval combat, if your ship is equipped with a ballista, just like in Sieges, it will increase your engineering skill, and it will also increase the brand new mariner skill, which we'll talk about more in the general section. Now on to naval navigation. You can travel through river systems. This will allow you to reach certain towns and strategic points, allowing for dozens of new locations to both attack and defend from. As I mentioned earlier, your mounts will take up your ship's inventory space. They won't provide a speed bonus like they do on land, and they will take up inventory rather than adding to it. So be very careful of that. You can only own and navigate one fleet of ships. However, it can consist of basically any number of ships that you can afford to run and man. And every clan in your kingdom will have their own fleet, meaning that if you have a big, strong kingdom, you could have hundreds of ships at your command by the late game. Next up, we'll talk more about perks in the general section, but I just want to say that one of the new perks, really cool. So one of the new perks for one of the new skills will allow you to add your prisoner count towards your ship's minimum crew requirements. So slavers rejoice. There is now even more reason than ever to keep your prisoners. And also, talking of rivers, bridges won't disrupt naval voyage. If there's a river that isn't landlocked, your ships can still traverse it, even if there is a bridge. And talking of things not restricting your naval voyages, inland bodies of water will not become frozen over, restricting your movement in the winter. Pathfinding and traversability will stay fully accessible for ships throughout all seasons. Also, there has been modifications to some terrain to allow ships to move as freely as possible and really be incorporated into the game. So a few different things. The islands between the Aserai and the Empire will be removed in the new Warsales map. They will still, however, be there for the base game map should you wish to play the original map or if you don't own the DLC. A small portion of terrain has also been modified, including the southern corridor between Kuyaz and Ortizia, and the northern pass linking Omor and Varnovopol. This will allow for travel into 2 massive bodies of water that would have previously been blocked off by crossings, which will hugely expand the map. And finally, for naval navigation, once you are at any town with a port, you can summon your fleet to you. You don't need to go back and collect them from wherever you last left them. And the arrival time will depend on the distance from you. Obviously, the further away they are, the longer it's going to take them to get to you. However, there are perks that can reduce the travel time, and it is shorter than regular travel time as standard. Now on to the few bits of information I have for you regarding ships in general. So ship prices will range from around 12,000 dinars for light ships to 150k for heavy hulls, also depending on any existing upgrades applied to the ship at the time of purchase. But certain perks can also reduce the final purchase price, and all of these prices are subject to change based on ongoing balancing efforts. Also, ships aren't just used for combat. You will even be able to buy trade convoys from coastal town merchants and run merchant vessels in very much the same way that you do with your caravans. And as with caravans, you'll be able to opt for standard or heavily armed merchants to help protect them against pirates. Also, though you won't start with a ship, small ships are extremely affordable as we just talked about. You will be able to afford one quite early on in any playthrough. And for even more added immersion, you can rename your ship. Now finally onto the general category. Along with additional character customization options being added to reflect the new Nord faction, characters from the Nord faction will have new Scandinavian-inspired accents in campaign conversations, and new voice presets will be added to reflect this in the character customization and will be available for you to select for all factions. They are also making visual and characteristic tweaks to Sturgia to make them stand apart from the Nords. So a few examples for you. They've said they don't want to make the changes so drastic that the Sturgians now feel alien to players who've gotten used to the current design. However, a few things they will be doing are one of the Sturgian cultural bonuses, as well as some Nordic-inspired banner icons will be changed. And likewise, various Nordic items that were previously used by Sturgian troops and nobles, for instance shields, weapons, armor and helmets, will be redistributed to the Nords, and new gear will be added to Sturgia to make them more different. A new attribute is not being added to incorporate the new naval-oriented skills. Each will be bound to already existing attributes. Some of the specifics may change, but what we know so far is you do have Mariner, which will enhance your personal combat prowess during naval engagements and bolster your effectiveness in leading troops and employing tactics in sea battles. This is bound to vigor and endurance. Bosun governs the well-being and discipline of your ship's crew, as well as the vessel's overall combat readiness, including rigging and supplies, and is bound to social and intelligence. And Shipmaster improves your navigational abilities, the effectiveness of naval siege engines under your command, and the speed and quality of ship repairs and upgrades, and this one is bound to control and cunning. And finally, just as we wrap up the video, there's also been a huge amount of change coming to towns, castles, and settlements, especially in regards to money and projects. There's been a rework of settlement income and tariffs, making settlement management and project choices far more meaningful. One example is that tariff income previously made up a tiny fraction of the town's income, around 2% on average, whereas now it will start out at around 30%, with some towns reaching over 60% if they are well situated for many trade routes and have the correct projects fully researched. That's not even everything we know about war sales yet. That's just most of the juicy stuff. There's even more that you can go and Google yourself should you wish. And as I say, just 2 more days to wait until I can start giving you lots and lots and lots of awesome content to get you hyped for the release of war sales. So make sure you're subscribed. If you already are, you're amazing. Thank you so much. And with that, my friends, all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.